In the far reaches of the galaxy, there was a legend, a whisper among the stars, carried by the wind of countless worlds. It was the tale of a woman, a mysterious alien named Silara. Her name was spoken in hushed tones, for she was both feared and avoided by all who knew her. Silara lived alone on a barren moon, far from any thriving civilization. The moon was cold, desolate, and silent. Not a single starship dared venture near, and the alien races across the galaxy had made it clear. No one should get close to Silara. Her skin was like nothing anyone had ever seen. It shimmered with a soft glow, changing colors like the light of distant stars. Some believed it was a curse, others thought it was a sign of power. It was said that anyone who came too close to her would face destruction. Ships would lose control, engines would fail, and people would fall ill without explanation. Alien species, each more advanced than the other, refused to even think about visiting her. Fear ran deep, and every race chose to keep their distance. But there was one human who did not fear her. Logan Hayes, a young explorer from Earth, had spent most of his life traveling the stars, studying different cultures and strange phenomena. When he first heard about Silara, his curiosity sparked. While everyone around him was terrified of the stories, Logan felt something different, something more powerful than fear: fascination. Logan was a cultural historian, a person who believed that the truth was always hidden beneath layers of fear and misunderstanding. He had studied ancient myths from across the universe, and he knew that every tale, no matter how frightening, had a reason behind it. It was just a matter of uncovering it. Silara is no monster, Logan thought to himself as he sat in the cockpit of his ship, looking at the star map that showed her moon. She's something far more interesting, and I intend to find out what that is. He set course for her moon, despite all the warnings from his fellow humans. They told him not to go, not to waste his time, but Logan was determined. He was driven by the belief that humans were capable of understanding anything if they just approached it with open minds. As Logan's ship approached the barren moon, the cold silence of space filled the air. His ship's systems began to flicker slightly as he neared the surface, but nothing too serious, just a hint of interference. It was as if the universe itself was trying to tell him to turn back, but Logan wasn't going to listen. The moon was just as desolate as the stories described, with jagged cliffs and endless stretches of gray dust. But in the distance, something else caught his eye: a soft, glowing light coming from a cavern near the moon's north pole. Logan guided his ship toward it, his heart beating with excitement. Landing on the cold surface, Logan stepped out, his boots crunching in the dust. The air was thin, almost non-existent, and there was no sign of life anywhere. But the glow, Silara's glow, seemed to call to him, a silent invitation. He followed the glowing path, each step carrying him closer to the unknown. His breath echoed in the stillness, and soon he found himself standing before a massive cavern entrance. The walls shimmered with a strange, soft light, and the air felt charged, as if something powerful was waiting inside. He took a deep breath, adjusting the pack on his back, and walked inside. There, in the center of the cavern, stood Silara. She was not what he had expected. Her figure was tall and graceful, her skin glowing like the moon itself. Her eyes, though, were what caught his attention the most: pools of deep violet, filled with both sadness and strength. She stood still, her eyes closed, as if meditating in perfect solitude. For a moment, Logan simply stood there, mesmerized by the sight of her. The rumors were true, but they were only part of the story. Silara was not a monster. She was something else entirely, an enigma, a being unlike any other he had ever encountered. "Who are you?" Logan asked gently, taking a step forward. His voice echoed in the cavern, but she didn't move. There was no fear in his heart, just pure curiosity. Silara's eyes opened slowly, and she turned her head to face him. Her gaze was intense, but not threatening. There was something about her, something ancient and wise. "You shouldn't be here," Silara said, her voice like the hum of distant stars. It was calm, but there was an undeniable authority in her words. "It's dangerous. For both of us." Logan smiled slightly. "I don't believe in danger from things I don't understand," he replied, his voice steady. Scifi studied him for a long time, and for the first time in years, she didn't feel the weight of fear. This human, Logan, was different from the others. There was no panic in his eyes, no trembling hands. Instead, he looked at her with something she hadn't seen in a long time: genuine interest. "I am not here to cause harm," Logan continued, taking another step forward. "I want to learn. I want to understand." Scifi's expression softened slightly, but she still kept her distance. "Understanding comes with a price. I'm willing to pay it," Logan said, his voice full of determination. For the first time in a long time, Scifi felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps, just perhaps, this human might be the key to unlocking a future she had long since given up on. Logan's heart raced as he stood in the presence of Scifi. Her glowing skin, like a million tiny stars trapped in translucent glass, illuminated the cavern with a soft, ethereal light. He couldn't take his eyes off her. This was not the terrifying figure that the galaxy had painted her to be. Instead, she was a living mystery, something that made him both nervous and excited. Scifi, standing motionless, studied him with those deep violet eyes. There was a quiet tension in the air. The power radiating from her seemed to fill the space around them, making the hairs on the back of Logan's neck stand on end. He could feel it, an energy unlike anything he had ever encountered before. It was as if the very air itself was charged with a kind of electricity that could tear apart any ship, any system, or any life form that got too close. "You shouldn't be here," Scifi said again, her voice almost musical, yet heavy with an underlying sadness. It was not an order, but a plea. She didn't want to hurt him. She didn't want to hurt anyone anymore. Logan didn't flinch. He had been to countless planets, had met all kinds of beings, and none of them had ever intimidated him. Fear wasn't a tool he relied on. Curiosity was. "I'm not afraid," Logan said, his voice calm but firm. "I've studied your people. I've read the stories. But there's always more than what people say. I want to understand what's happening here. I don't want to leave until I do." Scifi's eyes narrowed slightly, studying him with the kind of scrutiny that made Logan feel like she could see straight through him. Her energy was palpable now, almost as if it could reach out and engulf him at any moment. But Logan didn't move back. He stayed where he was, facing her without fear, without hesitation. "You think you can understand?" she asked softly, her voice tinged with doubt. "I carry the power to destroy everything I touch. I've lost everything. My home, my people, because of what I am. I don't want to hurt you." Logan's expression softened. He could hear the pain in her voice, and he could sense the weight of the past that Scifi carried. His heart went out to her. "I'm not afraid of you, Scifi," he said. "I'm not afraid of what you can do. I'm here to help." She shook her head, the glow of her skin flickering as if reacting to her emotions. "You don't understand. This is not something you can help with. My power is uncontrollable. I can't even leave this place without causing harm to others. That's why I stay here, alone. It's better this way." Logan stepped forward again, his eyes filled with determination. "I've seen humans survive things that should have destroyed them. We adapt. We find a way to live with the impossible. And if you let me, I'll help you find that way." There was a long silence between them. Scifi stood still, her hands at her sides, her head slightly tilted as she considered his words. No one had ever spoken to her like this before. No one had ever suggested that she could live with her power rather than be controlled by it. "Why would you help me?" Scifi asked, her voice laced with disbelief. "After everything you've heard, everything you've been told, why would you choose to stay?" Logan thought for a moment before responding. "Because I've learned that the universe isn't just about strength or power. It's about learning to work with what you have. You're not a monster, Xelara. You're just different. And different isn't a bad thing. You don't have to hide away from the galaxy. Her expression softened for a brief moment, but then she quickly regained her composure. You don't understand the full extent of it, she said quietly. I'm dangerous. I can't control what I am. If you stay too long, I'll hurt you, Logan. I can't risk that. Logan's voice was steady, but there was a deep sincerity behind it. I believe in you, Xelara. I don't think you want to hurt anyone. You're not a monster. And if anyone can find a way to control this power, it's you. There was a long pause as Xelara considered his words. Logan's belief in her, his refusal to be afraid, seemed to make an impact. Finally, she spoke again, her voice quieter, but no less firm. All right, I'll give you one chance, Xelara said. But if you get hurt, if anything goes wrong, you leave. Do you understand? Logan nodded, his eyes never leaving hers. I understand, but I'm not leaving. We'll find a way to make this work. Together. Xelara studied him for a moment longer, then finally nodded. She turned and motioned for him to follow her into the deeper part of the cavern. As Logan stepped forward, he couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. There was something about Xelara that was both powerful and tragic. He knew that this journey would be dangerous, but for the first time in his life, he felt like he was exactly where he needed to be. As they walked deeper into the heart of the cavern, the walls seemed to pulse with energy. Logan could feel it more strongly now, and he realized that Xelara's power wasn't something to be feared. It was something to be understood, and together they would find a way to unlock that understanding. The days passed slowly on the barren moon, but for Logan and Xelara, time seemed to blur. They spent their hours together, talking, learning, and trying to understand each other. Logan, with his endless curiosity, asked question after question about Xelara's past, her people, and the strange energy that she carried with her. Xelara, in turn, spoke of her life before the isolation, before the pain, when she had been part of a vibrant, thriving race. Xelara's people, the Lumora, were a peaceful species known for their advanced understanding of energy and the natural forces of the universe. They had the ability to manipulate energy in ways that no other species could, shaping light, sound, and even gravity itself. They lived on a beautiful world, a lush planet filled with shimmering cities and endless fields of soft, glowing flowers. But that peace had come to an end. One day, without warning, Xelara had made a mistake that had cost her people everything. She had tried to amplify the energy around them, intending to create a new form of power that would benefit the galaxy. But she had miscalculated. The energy had spiraled out of control, causing an explosion that devastated her entire planet. The Lumora were wiped out, their cities reduced to rubble, their beautiful world turned to ash. Xelara had survived, but the guilt she felt was a constant companion. The energy she had unleashed remained with her, and it was now a part of her, making her a danger to those around her. So, she had isolated herself, hiding away from the galaxy that once admired her people. As Logan listened to her story, he couldn't help but feel a deep sadness for Xelara. She wasn't a monster. She was a survivor, burdened by a tragic mistake. And yet, there was something about her, something strong, something resilient, that told Logan she could overcome it. He could see the flicker of hope still alive in her eyes, even if she tried to hide it. Logan's belief in her grew stronger each day. He didn't just see a woman with immense power. He saw someone who had been forced into a corner by her own past. He saw someone who could heal, if only she could learn to trust again. One afternoon, after a particularly quiet morning, Logan decided to try something new. He had been studying the energy that Xelara emitted, using human technology to measure and record its effects. So far, nothing had been able to withstand the raw power of her energy. Every tool, every device, had been rendered useless as soon as they got too close to her. But Logan wasn't ready to give up. He had an idea. He had read about human adaptability, and the way their bodies could adjust to environments that others found hostile. What if Silara's energy didn't need to be controlled? It needed to be understood. What if, by understanding it, she could learn to live with it rather than fear it? He shared his thoughts with her, and for the first time, Silara listened without dismissing him. "You think I can live with this?" she asked, her voice soft and uncertain. "You think I can change after everything I've done?" "I believe you can," Logan replied, his eyes sincere. "Humans don't shy away from the impossible. We face it, learn from it, and adapt. Maybe you've been running from your own power because you don't understand it, but I think we can find a way to make it work for you, not against you." Silara stared at him for a long time, as if searching for any sign that he might be right. She had lived with guilt for so long that the idea of overcoming it seemed impossible. But there was something in Logan's voice, something in his belief in her, that made her wonder if it could be true. "I'm willing to try," she said at last, "but I need to know that you won't give up on me when things get difficult." Logan smiled. "I don't give up easily." The next few days were filled with experiments. Logan set up simple tests, using his human equipment and tools to measure the effects of Silara's energy. At first, the results were discouraging. Every device he used was fried the moment it came into contact with her power. But Logan didn't let that stop him. He knew that this wasn't going to be easy, but he also knew that the only way to succeed was to keep trying. Silara watched him, unsure of what to think. For so long, she had been told that her energy was something to be feared, something that no one could understand. But Logan was different. He wasn't afraid of her power. He was curious about it. And that curiosity, that willingness to face the unknown, sparked something in her. Maybe, just maybe, she could learn to live with this energy. After several more days of trial and error, something incredible happened. One evening, Logan was adjusting a set of sensors when he noticed that the readings were different. The energy wasn't as destructive as before. It was still powerful, but it seemed to have calmed, as if responding to his efforts. Logan turned to Silara, his eyes wide with excitement. "It's working," he said. "Your energy is stabilizing. We're getting closer to understanding it." Silara felt a strange sensation deep inside her, something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Maybe she wasn't a monster. Maybe she could learn to control her power, to live without causing harm. "I think we're on the right track," she said quietly, her voice filled with cautious optimism. And for the first time since the tragedy that had shattered her world, Silara felt a flicker of hope that her future might not be defined by her past. For several days, Logan and Silara continued their work in the cavern, testing and experimenting with the strange energy that Silara controlled. Every day, the energy seemed to stabilize more, as if it were responding to the care and attention they were giving it. Logan was thrilled. He had always believed that with enough patience and understanding, anything was possible. And now he was beginning to see the results. Silara, on the other hand, was cautiously optimistic. She had spent years in isolation, running from her own power, too afraid to even try to understand it. Now, with Logan's help, she was beginning to believe that perhaps there was a way to live with it, instead of being controlled by it. She was learning to trust him, little by little, and each step forward felt like a victory. But not all progress comes easily. One afternoon, as Logan and Silara were working, something unexpected happened. A sudden shift in the energy sent a powerful wave of force through the cavern, shaking the walls and causing the ground to tremble beneath their feet. Logan's heart raced as he grabbed onto the nearest support beam to steady himself. The energy that Silara controlled was more volatile than he had realized. He glanced over at her, seeing her face tense with concentration. Her eyes were glowing brighter than usual, and she was clearly struggling to keep the energy under control. "Silara, focus," Logan shouted over the rumble of the cavern. "We need to stabilize it now." Silara closed her eyes, her entire body trembling with the effort to hold the energy in check. The wave of power had come from her. She had lost control for a moment. And the cavern was now paying the price. Logan could see the strain on her face, the sweat beading on her forehead as she fought to regain control. "I can't." Celara gasped, her voice tight with fear. "It's too much. It's too powerful." Logan's mind raced. He couldn't let this energy destroy them both. He had to act quickly. But what could he do? He wasn't a scientist, and he certainly wasn't equipped to handle something as powerful as what Celara had inside her. But then it hit him. He had been thinking about this all wrong. He had been treating the energy like a problem to solve, something to fix. But what if that wasn't the answer? What if the key wasn't in controlling the energy, but in working with it? "Celara," he shouted again, his voice calm but urgent. "You don't need to fight it. You need to accept it. You're not the enemy here. This energy is a part of you, not something you need to control. Let it flow through you. Trust it." Celara looked at him, her eyes wide with panic. "But if I let it go, I'll hurt you. I'll hurt everything. I can't control it when it's like this." Logan stepped closer, not afraid, but determined. "You don't need to control it. You need to trust it. Trust yourself. This energy is a part of who you are. It's not your enemy." For a long moment, Celara seemed frozen in place, her eyes flickering with doubt. But then, slowly, she nodded. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. It was a deep, steadying breath, one that seemed to calm not just her, but the energy itself. Logan watched in awe as the glow of her skin dimmed. The power that had been threatening to burst out of control began to settle. The tremors in the ground stopped, and the cavern slowly returned to its eerie stillness. The air seemed to hum with a new kind of energy, one that felt alive but not threatening. Logan stepped forward, his heart still pounding, but now with a sense of relief. "You did it," he said, a small smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "You didn't fight it. You worked with it." Celara opened her eyes and looked at him, the relief in her expression almost as bright as the glow that had surrounded her. "I didn't think I could," she whispered. "I've spent so long running from this power. I thought it would destroy me, destroy everything." Logan shook his head. "You were never the problem. Celara, this power was never the enemy. It's just a part of you. You don't need to fear it anymore." Celara's lips parted, as if she wanted to say something, but no words came. For the first time in a long while, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Peace. A deep, calming peace. The energy inside her was still there, but it no longer felt like a ticking bomb. Instead, it felt like a gift, something she could learn to live with, rather than something she had to control. "I'm sorry," Celara said quietly, her voice tinged with guilt. "I never should have pushed you away. You believed in me when I didn't believe in myself." Logan smiled softly, his gaze steady. "You didn't need to believe in yourself right away. It's okay. I'm just glad I didn't give up on you." Celara took a deep breath, looking out into the cavern. She had made progress, yes, but she knew that this was only the beginning. There were still many challenges ahead, and she didn't know what the future held. But for the first time, she felt like she could face it, not as someone broken, but as someone whole. Logan stood beside her, his eyes reflecting the same hope that now flickered in her heart. Together, they would continue to face the unknown. And together, they would learn that nothing was truly impossible. After the breakthrough, Celara felt more confident than she had in years. With Logan by her side, she had learned to control the powerful energy inside her. It no longer felt like an uncontrollable force, but something that could be used for good. Each day brought more understanding, and each day, the bond between them grew stronger. But peace, as Celara knew all too well, was often fleeting. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the barren moon's distant horizon, the ground beneath them suddenly shook. The strange hum of energy that had been surrounding them seemed to intensify, and Celara froze. "What's happening?" Logan asked, his voice tense. Celara's eyes narrowed. "I don't know, but it's not good." Suddenly, a sharp metallic sound filled the air, followed by the unmistakable whine of engines. Logan's heart raced as he looked up to see a massive ship descending from the sky, its dark, sleek shape cutting through the clouds. The ship was unlike any he had seen before. It was large and menacing, with sharp edges and glowing red lights. The ship landed with a heavy thud, causing the ground to shake beneath them. Logan and Silara exchanged a glance. Something was wrong. "They found us," Silara said, her voice grim. "I should have known this day would come." "Who are they?" Logan asked, his hand instinctively going to the blaster at his side. "They're the Vraxians," Silara replied, her face darkening. "They were the ones who exiled me. They're the ones who blame me for the destruction of my people." Logan's mind raced as he tried to make sense of the situation. The Vraxians were a ruthless species known for their advanced military technology and their hatred for anything they deemed a threat. They had never been merciful to anyone they saw as an enemy. "They can't know we're here," Logan said quickly. "We have to move now." Silara shook her head. "They know. They always know. I've been a fugitive for years, and now they've come to finish what they started." Logan stepped forward, determination in his eyes. "We're not running, Silara. You don't have to face this alone. We'll fight together." Silara hesitated, her mind swirling with doubt. She had spent so long avoiding confrontation, afraid of losing control of the energy inside her, but she couldn't run forever. And this time, she didn't have to. "All right," she said, her voice steady. "We fight." The ground vibrated as the Vraxian soldiers began to march towards them. Their heavy footsteps echoed through the cavern, their armor gleaming in the dim light. The soldiers were tall and imposing, with sharp, angular features and glowing red eyes. They carried weapons that looked far too advanced for anything Logan had ever seen. Silara stepped forward, her hands crackling with energy. She raised her arms, and the air around her shimmered with a soft, golden light. The energy within her responded, humming in tune with her every movement. "I can hold them off," Silara said, her voice calm but filled with power. "But I need you to help me disable their weapons. If we can take out their communication systems, they won't be able to call for reinforcements." Logan nodded. "I'll do my best." He sprinted towards the edge of the cavern, using the natural cover of rocks and boulders to keep himself hidden. As he moved, he took note of the Vraxian soldiers' positions, searching for weaknesses in their formation. He could hear their voices growing louder, but he couldn't risk being spotted. Meanwhile, Silara stood her ground. The soldiers had begun to fire at her, their weapons releasing bursts of energy that crackled through the air. But Silara was ready. She raised her hands, and the energy surged outward, forming a protective barrier around her. The blasts from the Vraxian weapons bounced off her shield, but she knew it wouldn't hold forever. She had to act fast. She pushed forward, using the energy to propel herself toward the soldiers. The ground beneath her feet cracked and split as she moved, her power shaking the very earth. The soldiers were forced to step back, startled by her strength. Silara focused on one of their communication devices, sending a pulse of energy that short-circuited it instantly. The soldier who had been holding it dropped to the ground, his weapon sparking. Logan, seeing his chance, sprinted toward the Vraxian ship. He ducked behind a large metal hull, breathing hard. The ship's engine hummed, its systems still active. He could see the entrance on the side, a large hatch that had been left slightly open. He approached cautiously, trying not to make a sound. Inside, the ship was dark and cold. Logan moved quickly through the narrow corridors, searching for anything that would disable their communication systems. He found a control panel near the back of the ship and immediately got to work. He was no engineer, but he had learned enough from his travels to know how to hack into systems. His hands moved quickly, pressing buttons and pulling wires, trying to disable the ship's ability to call for reinforcements. Outside, Silara continued to fend off the Vraxian soldiers. She was surrounded, but her energy was strong, and she refused to back down. Each time the soldiers attacked, she countered with a burst of energy, pushing them back. Logan's voice came through her earpiece. "I've almost got it. Keep them busy for just a little longer." Scifi gritted her teeth. "I'm not going anywhere." With a final surge of energy, she sent a wave of force toward the remaining soldiers, sending them tumbling backward. Her heart was pounding, but she could feel the energy coursing through her veins. She was in control now, and she wouldn't let the Vraxians take that away from her. The Vraxian soldiers lay scattered across the cavern floor, their armor dented and their weapons sparking uselessly. Scifi stood at the center of the chaos, her body glowing with the golden energy she had mastered. She breathed heavily, her heart still racing from the intensity of the battle. The threat was not over, but for now, the immediate danger had passed. Logan's voice crackled through her earpiece. "Scifi, I've disabled their communications. They won't be able to call for reinforcements. But we're not out of the woods yet." Scifi nodded, her eyes scanning the surroundings. The cavern was still and eerily quiet, but she knew that the Vraxians would regroup soon. She couldn't let her guard down. She took a deep breath, allowing the energy inside her to settle. She had never fought like this before, not since the destruction of her world. But now, with Logan by her side, she felt stronger than ever. She had to keep moving forward, for herself and for the future they might build together. "We need to go," she said, her voice steady. "The Vraxians will return. We have to leave before they regroup." Logan appeared from behind the ship's hull, his face tense but relieved. "Good. I've also sent a signal to warn any nearby ships that the Vraxians are here. Hopefully, we'll buy ourselves some time." Scifi gave him a small smile, grateful for his quick thinking. "You're more than just a soldier, Logan." Logan's smile was brief but genuine. "I've learned a lot from you." They quickly moved toward the exit of the cavern, staying low to avoid being seen. The Vraxian ship remained ominously silent behind them, a reminder that the danger was far from over. As they reached the opening of the cavern, Scifi felt the weight of their situation. The Vraxians would never stop hunting her. They had made that clear. "We can't keep running forever," Scifi said quietly, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "They won't stop until they have me." Logan stopped beside her, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "And we won't stop fighting. As long as we're together, we have a chance. You're not alone in this." Scifi's eyes softened, and for the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to believe in the possibility of hope. She had spent years in isolation, thinking that her past had condemned her to a life of loneliness. But now, with Logan by her side, she saw that maybe, just maybe, she could find a way to move past her mistakes. They made their way to a hidden base on the far side of the moon. The base was small and unremarkable, tucked away in a cave that few knew about. It had been abandoned long ago, but it was perfect for their needs. As they entered, Logan immediately set to work, scanning the interior for anything useful. He was quickly pulling up old maps and data from the base's systems. "This could work," Logan said, his eyes scanning the screen. "We can use the old comms to contact the local resistance. They may be able to help us." Scifi nodded. "We'll need allies if we're going to fight the Vraxians. I can't do this alone." Logan's voice was firm as he replied, "You won't have to." While Logan worked on contacting the resistance, Scifi took a seat in the corner of the room, her thoughts racing. She was no longer the woman who had caused the destruction of her world. She wasn't the broken person who had run from her past. With Logan's help, she had learned to control the energy within her, and together, they had defeated the Vraxian soldiers. But the battle was far from over. The Vraxians would come again, stronger and better prepared. And Scifi had no illusions about the challenges ahead. They had only just begun to scratch the surface of what they would face. But for the first time in a long while, Scifi wasn't afraid of what the future might hold. She had Logan, and that made all the difference. Logan looked up from the console, his expression grim. "The resistance is on their way. They'll meet us at the coordinates I sent. It'll take some time, but we'll have backup soon. Scifi stood and walked over to him, her heart swelling with gratitude. Thank you, Logan, for everything. He smiled at her, his eyes warm. We make a good team. Just as they finished their preparations, the sound of footsteps echoed through the base. Scifi tensed, her eyes narrowing. Had the Vraxians found them again? But then, the door to the base opened, and a group of people entered. They were dressed in simple armor, their faces worn but determined. The leader of the group, a tall woman with short, dark hair, stepped forward. You must be Scifi, she said, her voice steady. We've heard your story, and we're here to help you fight the Vraxians. Scifi studied the woman for a moment before replying. And you are? My name is Captain Ryona, the woman said, her gaze firm. We've been fighting the Vraxians for years. We know what they're capable of, and we're ready to stand with you. Scifi felt a wave of relief wash over her. These people, these rebels, were her first true allies in a long time. They were willing to risk everything to fight the same enemy. Thank you, Scifi said, her voice strong. Together, we can take them down. The resistance had arrived, and with their help, Scifi and Logan would not only fight for survival, but for the chance to rebuild and find peace once again. The resistance had gathered quickly, their arrival giving Scifi and Logan the hope they desperately needed. The small, hidden base had become a symbol of strength, a place where the weary could find rest, and the determined could plan their next move. Scifi, standing at the heart of it all, was no longer the fugitive she had once been. She was a leader now, no longer running from her past, but standing tall in the face of the future. For the first time in years, Scifi felt a sense of belonging. The people around her weren't just soldiers or rebels. They were her allies, united by a shared purpose. They had come together to fight the same enemy, the Vraxians. Logan stood beside her, his presence a constant source of strength. His calm, steady demeanor had helped her through the darkest moments. And now, as they prepared for the final stand, his confidence in her was unwavering. We gathered all the resources we need, Captain Ryona said, stepping forward. Her sharp eyes scanned the room as she addressed the group of rebels. We know where the Vraxians are staging their next attack. It's time to take the fight to them. Scifi nodded, her hands clenched into fists. We can't let them win. This isn't just about survival anymore. This is about taking back control of our future. Ryona looked at her with understanding. You're right. The Vraxians have terrorized too many worlds for too long. It's time they learn that we're not afraid anymore. The rebels rallied around Scifi, their determination shining through their eyes. They had heard the stories of her strength, of how she had learned to control the power within her, and they believed in her. Logan placed a hand on her shoulder. Are you ready for this? Scifi took a deep breath, feeling the familiar hum of energy inside her. The energy that had once terrified her now felt like an extension of herself, something she could control, something she could use to protect those she cared about. I'm ready, she said, her voice steady. Let's finish this. The plan was simple, but dangerous. The rebels would launch a distraction attack on the Vraxian forces, drawing them out of their stronghold. Meanwhile, Scifi, Logan, and Captain Ryona would infiltrate the Vraxian command center and disable their systems, crippling their ability to coordinate their forces. The night before the attack, Scifi stood alone on a cliff outside the base, staring up at the stars. She had spent so many years running from her past, from the power inside her, but now it was different. She had people who believed in her, who fought alongside her. And for the first time, she felt a deep sense of peace. She wasn't alone. Logan appeared beside her, his silhouette barely visible in the fading light. You thinking about the past? Scifi shook her head. No, I'm thinking about the future. He smiled, his voice soft. We'll make it a good one. The next morning, the final assault began. The rebel forces moved quickly, catching the Vraxians off guard. The distraction was successful, and soon the Vraxians were scrambling to defend their base. Silara, Logan, and Captain Ryona made their way to the Vraxian stronghold, moving swiftly through the rocky terrain. The entrance was heavily guarded, but with Silara's energy, they managed to slip past unnoticed. Inside, the corridors were cold and dark, the walls humming with the faint pulse of energy from the Vraxian machinery. Silara's heart raced as they moved deeper into the complex. The closer they got to the command center, the more intense the energy in the air became. "There it is," Logan whispered, pointing to a large door ahead. Beyond it lay the heart of the Vraxian operation. Silara knew that once they entered, there would be no turning back. Together, they entered the command center. The room was filled with rows of control panels, and several Vraxian officers were stationed at their stations, unaware of the approaching threat. Silara didn't hesitate. She raised her hands, and the energy inside her surged forward, creating a barrier of light that filled the room. The Vraxians froze, their eyes wide with surprise. Silara's energy crackled, charging the air around them. "We need to disable their systems," she said, her voice calm but filled with determination. "Logan, Captain Ryona, help me." Logan and Ryona immediately set to work, hacking into the control panels and disabling the Vraxians' communication systems. Silara focused on the central core, the source of the Vraxian power. She could feel its energy pulsing, a deep, resonating hum that vibrated through her very bones. With a deep breath, Silara extended her power toward the core, sending a surge of energy that caused the system to flicker and crackle. The lights dimmed, and the machinery groaned in protest. It was working. The Vraxian officers scrambled to respond, but it was too late. The core was collapsing, and with it, the Vraxians' control over their forces. The ground shook as the energy within the command center destabilized. Silara's hands trembled, but she refused to stop. The Vraxians would not win. "We've done it," Logan shouted, his voice filled with relief. "Their systems are down." Silara allowed herself a brief smile before turning to the others. "Let's go. This is our chance." They made their way out of the complex, the sound of the Vraxians' retreat echoing behind them. As they emerged into the light, Silara felt a sense of triumph wash over her. The battle was won, but the war was far from over. As they joined the rest of the rebels, Silara looked at Logan, her heart swelling with gratitude. Together, they had faced the impossible. Together, they had fought back the Vraxians. And together, they would continue to fight for their future and for the freedom of every world the Vraxians had threatened.